Okay, it's our time. What a privilege to be here amidst all the great conversations today. To kick things off, I'd love to just have each of you introduce yourselves and share a brief note about what it is that you do here.
Should I start? Okay.
Please.
Caitlin Arens, she, her pronouns. I am the Food Education Fellowship Director at Pilot Light. First of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you to everyone for having me. My role at Pilot Light is focused on working with teachers. We're an organization that invests and partners with teachers to use food as a teaching tool in classrooms. We were started in Chicago. We are now nationwide, which is really exciting, through a lot of support from the USDA. So shout out to fellow panelists here. Yeah, just grateful to be here. I'll pass it along.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Marcy. I'm Interim Executive Director at Healthy Schools Campaign. We're a nonprofit advocacy organization. We're based in Chicago, but we work at the national and state levels, and we're dedicated to making schools healthier places. So from the food that kids eat at school, to their opportunities to be physically active and play, to their connection to nature, to crucial health services. And we do that through an advocacy model that also includes parent organizing and incorporating student voices into the school meal program.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samia Hamdan. I am from the USDA Food and Nutrition Service Agency. We administer now 16 food assistance programs, and my role is a Child Nutrition Programs Director, so I oversee and work with all the child nutrition programs, including the National School Lunch Program. And we're actually based here in Chicago. We work with 7 state agencies and 23 tribal organizations to support the administration and implementation of our programs. And we serve as kind of in a training, technical assistance, and oversight role, but we're also an ears on the ground. So we bring back challenges, best practices, and issues for our policymakers in DC.
Oh, ita koro ni wina hana chini karagiwi mashu ska ga waha nangshina hochang choerigi warehi karashire de wa unje. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Greendeer. I am the president of the Ho-Chunk Nation. I work a lot with the Feeding Wisconsin and the Hunger Relief Federation. We oversee a lot of school districts as well with a lot of our tribal members there. We also work with a lot of our local businesses and counties. We have roughly 8,000 tribal members, roughly about 6,500 about 6,000 within the state of Wisconsin, many of those outside of the state as well.
Thank you so much. So many of our conversations today have centered around the future of food and of our food systems. At the core of that, I think we could all agree, are our children. But right now, research suggests 1 in 9 are experiencing hunger. That's showing some marginal improvement even over the last years coming out of the pandemic. So I'd like to start with just a little bit of a level set from each of your perspectives of what are the challenges that each of your organizations are facing right now as it relates to feeding our kids, and particularly in schools. Claire, I'll start with you.
I mean, I think the challenge is huge, and it's been around for a while, and it's getting more serious and more attention, especially during the pandemic. We started to focus in on this issue with a different lens. We work in Chicago, and Chicago serves 46 million school meals a year. There's a huge opportunity to provide healthy meals to students, especially students from under-resourced communities and families with low incomes. And there's a huge opportunity to move the needle on healthier food and to teach lifelong lessons about eating healthy. I feel like our schools are prepped to teach all these life lessons to kids, and the school meal program needs to be in sync with that and fully incorporated in that. I think that there are challenges built into the system that force school districts to really focus on participation rates and maybe make choices that are not the best choice for the long term as a result of that. Chicago Public Schools has done a great job of moving to more scratch cooking, to free universal school meals, to breakfast after the bell, has done a lot of work in that area, and I'm really proud to be partnering with the district. But there are challenges inherent to the system that make it challenging and make short-term solutions more palatable because of the financial concerns around school food. So I think that that's a paradox that we have to wrap our heads around if we really want to make a big difference.
Of course. How about you, Samia?
So I think one of the major challenges that really came to light for schools, we work obviously very closely with schools, are the supply chain challenges, especially during the pandemic, and learning about how many contracts were canceled, especially for small food service directors who are not necessarily a large customer. The cost of supplies, the cost of labor, the turnover in labor, so a lot of challenges for the school food service community. I would say there's lots of opportunity here. I think a lot of lessons learned. One of the best practices that we heard about on the ground are just very small school districts getting together and becoming a large cooperative buying group so that they can become more attractive to large manufacturers and be able to have that buying power and source the goods that they need. Also, resorting to local food systems was huge. That was a game changer for many of our schools that could not source from larger vendors or larger suppliers. At the USDA, we were able to release $2.5 billion in 3 rounds in supply chain assistance funds through existing authority that we have, and those funds were able to be used to support the sourcing of domestic products. So a lot of school districts were able to purchase milk, which is very expensive, and that helped shift some of the other existing funds they have in their accounts to cover the cost of supplies and labor and things like that. So that was a huge issue, and it remains that way. And actually, we will be issuing another round of funding, I believe, $1.5 billion. And then also access. I would just be remiss if I didn't say we're in the midst of summer. During the school year, we have 32 million children every day that participate in the National School Lunch Program, and that number drops significantly over the summer months. I think we have about 1 in 6 children that are eligible to participate in the summer programs that actually do. So I'm also excited to share that through the omnibus bill that was passed in December, Congress gave us the authority to allow for non-congregate feeding in rural sites, meaning that in the rural communities where there are no summer food service programs, there can be sites set up simply to be able to feed kids so that their families can pick up those meals and take them home. So that's huge. That should be able to increase the number of children who have access to summer meals by 8 million. And then I also wanted to share, we're really, really excited to be able to launch our summer EBT program next summer. So we're working with our states very closely to try to get this implemented and off the ground, which would basically provide children who are eligible for free and reduced price meals to receive $40 a month for the 3 summer months to add on to the summer meals that they would also be able to have access to. So that really just helps ensure that nutritious meals are provided to children, but access is also an issue.
That's great, thank you. John, curious to hear from your perspective when we think about school procurement and providing equitable access to healthy food for kids. What are you seeing? What are the opportunities that you've been trying to take advantage of here?
Well, absolutely, thank you. Mine might be a little bit different than my co-panelists here. My experiences, I was one of the free lunch recipients in the school line. So for those of you in that generation, you may have had a different colored ticket. Not the reduced, those were the richer people that had the reduced lunch. The access started a long time ago, and today it is a little bit different among indigenous communities. For us, food looks a little bit different than it did in pre-colonial times. So for us, when we talk about our children, I don't think anyone from my community any children from my community is going to be really excited that we passed a farm bill, or that we received an allocation, or someone got authority to do anything. I think what our kids are excited is about a story of our past and how we used to access what we believe is food. Telling them how we harvested deer, or how we changed corn into hominy, and how we harvested some of the wood to make some of the medicines that we use in our community. Those things through colonization are behind us. And one of the advantages that we have right now are still a handful of people that have the wisdom to bring us back to our old cultural diets, to actually go back in time, to go forward in our health and nutrition. It is no surprise that when we take a look at these foods in our economically deprived communities, that we're talking about tribal communities, which is a little bit more than just not reaching the economic filters of income. It's also education, it's also health. If you take a look at our history and just some of the things that you've learned about colonization, it is no wonder why our children have the highest obesity rates, the most likely chances that they're going to be diagnosed with diabetes even in their teens, the highest mortality rates, the lowest academic achievement rates. So these things are all affected by our access to the basics of life. Food, water, and shelter. These are some of the very simple things that we learned at a very early age in school. And now our most sophisticated species on the planet is still, regardless of all of the wonderful things that is happening in DC and some of the local multinational food redistribution efforts, we are still struggling economically and statistically with a lot of these areas. So one of the things that the Ho-Chunk Nation has done is prioritize reteaching or finding access to the knowledge and wisdom, which I believe is the fourth element of survival, to learn how to harvest fish, to grow corn, to understand the three sisters and the seventh generation teachings. So this is a little bit unique from all the wonderful advancements of food redistribution. We are very much a part of it. As a matter of fact, the Ho-Chunk Nation is probably one of the largest redistributors of food. We are now reaching about 3.5 million pounds of food that we have redistributed to not only tribal communities, but also communities that have been looking for food during the pandemic. One of the nicest things that has derived from the pandemic, and we all have to agree that there are some initiatives that derive from this essential social tragedy that we had, is the idea that we can come together to help out. Now, this redistribution meant common folks like myself went out and got their CDLs. That volunteers had showed up in 12 different locations, so we were removing 2.5 semis of food every week. And our employees who were allowed to participate, our community volunteers who were happy to help, we were out there sometimes donning full PPE in order to serve our people. We're able to not only feed our families, but also provide education through at least 5 of our dietitians that are on staff to teach us how to make food so it's healthy and so it's sustainable. So we cannot teach our children to eat healthy if they don't have food to begin with. And so one of the wonderful things that we've been able to do is learn a little bit about indigenous foods, working with our indigenous chefs who are now taking over America with some of their culinary expertise and teaching us that we can still tap into some of these old pre-colonial food systems and still have a wonderful dining experience at the table, and now we see them like wildfire across the world. So things have been happening really well, and I know that the index of our indigenous youth are starting to improve with a lot of the organizations like the No Tip Gay Foundation down in the Southwest, who has been very active in making sure that we have programming for our indigenous youth. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I know that nods beautifully to something said earlier today about how to really show progress, we actually really need to look backwards and kind of return to our roots. And I think so much of 7 Generations and Three Sisters principles will teach so much across our nation's food programs. In the narrative for childhood education and how they eat and what they learn to eat, I think nods so beautifully to the work that Pilot Light does. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, what impact can these collaborative programs between teachers, farmers, and nonprofits have to engage students in their own education about what nutritious food is?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you to my panelists. I think you did a beautiful job of leading into this question, John, and thank you to Chef Jessica Walks First, who I hope is still in the audience, a close friend of ours too. We could not do this work without all of you. It's collective work to understand the stories and the histories and the opinions of the people who are the original stewards of this land. I just want to take a moment to name that really honestly. And also that so much of the work that we do is stewarded by teachers. There's actually a new bill that's hopefully coming to Pritzker's desk that's going to speak to this and is going to invest in the importance of indigenous foodways in Illinois. So something that we do at Pilot Light is, again, invest in teachers, Teachers know their students best. In fact, we have a teacher from our original classroom with us today, so give her a round of applause. I think it's really, really important to believe in that work. It's really hard work. It's similar to the work of food professionals. I myself have a background more in that space, but I think the dedication to service and the dedication to doing that sometimes, when you're not paid necessarily what you want to be, or when you're not protected in the way that you want to be, is really important. And something that Pilot Light does is we work in partnership. We bridge silos across departments within schools, which can often seem like a small impact, but is often a really large impact at a school level, to build capacity within teachers, to develop partnerships within their schools, and also outside of their schools with community organizations, farmers, local advocates, policy people, hopefully. And we've done this, as I mentioned before, with a lot of the support from USDA Farm to School programs over the years. Teachers in our fellowship program, which is what I run, all conduct a student-led advocacy project that they work on in the beginning of the year with our team to identify what is a food issue that the students care about within their communities, and can we build capacity and build partnerships with them as an organization, or just as a layer of inquiry and curiosity, which is often a point of connection for teachers in the beginning of the year, to develop the capacity within the students then to be advocates in their own worlds and communities. So it's really about meeting the teachers where they're at and what their needs are.
Thanks, Caitlin. Claire, I would love to hear your builds on that, and thinking about really when we look at all the stakeholders that have a seat at the table in feeding kids healthy and nutritious food. What role, even many of the people in this audience, what can we do to be advocates, and what does your organization encourage from that perspective?
I mean, I think that there's so many different relationships and partnerships that have to come into play. I mean, one of the things that we do is organize parents and find out what kind of issues that they're concerned about, and then help them build power in the schools and in the school district. And when we survey parents, school food is one of the #1 issues. And so we've brought parents in to understand how the food system works, to share their thoughts and opinions about how the school food program is being implemented at their local schools, but also what kind of menus they would like to see, and what kind of culturally responsive menu planning they would hope to have. We also work with partners like Open Lands to bring green schoolyards to Chicago schools, and all of those green schoolyards have edible gardens, and so having kids experience the growing food and getting nutrition education is a big way of sort of opening minds and getting kids to try new foods. So there's the high level stuff that we do around policy change and advocacy, and then there's the literally like getting your hands dirty work that we do to create those connections and to create those community connections, and also to build oversight. Every public institution is better if there's daylight and transparency, and so we work to make sure that policies are published and that parents and community members and caregivers feel like they can be there's an accountability system there, and that they can have their voices heard. So I think there are a lot of different ways for people to get involved. Talk to a local school, get involved with a community-based organization, but let those organizations tell you what they need and show you the way, because a lot of people have opinions about things like school food, and that's great, but there are a lot of local people who've done a lot of important work that deserve to be heard and have a lot of expertise.
And to that end, I would love to, we're moving so quickly today, I'd love with our last remaining time to just have each of you share, use this platform for your organization and share a little bit of that knowledge, or what your most important next steps are for this group and for those watching.
What a hard question to lead into, but I will say, I think something that's really important, we've been talking a lot about food access, and food access by definition needs to include food education. Food access cannot exclusively just be putting something somewhere and not necessarily supporting the community's existing knowledge to understand what to do with that item, or what to do with those processes, those materials, those ingredients, again, equipment, and that's a lot of what Pilot Light does. We have a number of different programs. Seriously, come hang out. A lot of my team is here, and meet us, get to know what might be a good fit for you and your community. We work with the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program to specifically pair teachers with a resource of lessons that will connect fresh fruit and vegetables that are delivered already to classrooms, in order for teachers to kind of expose students and draw curiosity between teachers and peers within a school building. We also do work in the ag and advocacy space. I don't know if David is still here, but grateful for all the farmers that did a lot of the work with that on us. And again, the fellowship, just encourage your teachers to learn and explore our standards in our work.
Okay.
I would just say get involved with the local organizations, support organizations that are doing this important work, and get to understand your food systems. And it's complex and it's multi-layered, and understand how hard people in these districts are working to try to create change. So, you know, say hi to the people in your school and roll your sleeves up and help out.
Thank you.
So we have quite a few priorities at USDA. We talked a little bit about the summer programs. We're also talking about access to nutritious food. So one of the things that we are working on, we will be publishing a new regulation next year to improve the nutrition standards in school meals, and really building on a lot of the progress the schools have made since the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act was implemented in 2010. So we'll be looking at added sugars, whole grains, sodium, and really setting those standards in a way that's nutritious, but also practical for schools to implement and manufacturers to work with. So that's going to be a big lift for us. And then, of course, promoting our farm to school grants. We do a round of grants every year, just again to help build that local supply chain resiliency. And lastly, I'll just share, there's, you might have heard, there's a large momentum around the country right now around promoting free meals for all children. Again, we learned I'm hearing some applause. We learned some great things during the pandemic, and we were able, through congressional authority, to make free meals available during the pandemic to be able to provide those safe and nutritious meals. But that authority has since ended. So state agencies or state governments have taken it upon themselves to pass legislation. And here in the Midwest region, I am really excited to share that Minnesota has passed a permanent program that is being implemented right now. Michigan has passed a program that's being implemented right now. Ohio has provided funding to eliminate the reduced price meals. Illinois has also passed legislation. I don't believe funding has been authorized this year for it. So at USDA, we are strong supporters of that, and we will continue to support that, to work with our states to provide technical assistance. There's a program called the Community Eligibility Provision, which helps support free meals where there's a certain number of children that qualify for free federal assistance programs. We also published a rule, and we're going to be finalizing that rule, that will lower the threshold for schools to be able to participate to 25% ISP. So we're really excited. We're going to be very busy, but those are just some of the priorities we're working on at USDA.
Thank you.
Well, finally, I want to prematurely announce a new market out there, and these are our indigenous growers that have risen up from the pandemic. And as we went out and made the initiative to make sure food was available for all the communities, regardless of color or income, to subside the effects of the pandemic, we also noticed that the food itself started to change, and pretty soon the priorities were not just to get food out to communities, but to start to be specific about locally grown foods, even within the state, local businesses that have been emerging as a result of that. And then as well, they were looking for a lot of tribal growers, to which there were not as many, or that grew at the capacity to serve a larger market. So now it looks like many of these growers had become incorporated, have instituted their own agricultural resource management plans, and are starting to build a legion and a confederacy of indigenous growers. That market is not only just a market I would recommend as a local market resource, but also perhaps as a partner, because the tribes that are located and situated around, nearly 600 of them, receive federal recognition and have direct and unique exclusive access to federal governments, federal grants, and abilities to actually grow that. So if you find yourself in the ability to attach yourself as a partner with some of these indigenous growers or producers, I believe that's a market that is yet to be tapped, but I believe the first people to do that are going to find themselves quite successful in the food distribution and redistribution business.
Amazing. Well, we are at time, so let's get a big round of applause for this tremendous panel. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Keep the round of applause going. It was a great way to end the discussions for today. I want to thank these panelists, of course, but all of our panelists and moderators for today who've done a really, really extraordinary job. Another round of applause. Keep the energy going. We're not done yet.